Melissa Landon. I'm a technology strategist. So formerly I was chief strategy officer at a company called Cyclica. They were building AI technologies to predict drug polypharmacology, so what a drug was doing when it entered your body. And nowadays I work with AI startups who are developing technologies in the life sciences to impact drug discovery. I really wanted to hear, first of all, from the other speakers who are here. I thought it was a great lineup. I met Usama and the EAI team really when they were just starting up, and was really impressed with what they're trying to do and been impressed with the progress that they've made. So I just thought it'd be a great opportunity to connect and be in a room with other people who are equally as passionate and maybe also as skeptical as I am. Yeah, well, I think it's good. I think if you've spent your whole life, your whole professional career in one or the other, whether you spent it all in academia or all in industry, to lose perspective, right? And so I think from an academic perspective, I think it's really good to hear from industry, what the real problems are, what they're seeing, what's going to move the needle, what's not, and to help inform academics, their plan, their strategy, and how they're thinking about their own research and the impact that it could have. And I also similarly think from the other side, it's great for industry to see what's going on in academia. How are investigators approaching problems? What are things likely, technologies that are likely to maybe come to market in the next several years or decades. So I think that having that interchange, and so where one can influence and impact the other, is really important. I mean, I think to the extent that we can break down any kind of communication silo that exists, I think it's a worthy endeavor. My most common advice is to really try to understand the problem first and what has been done and why the problem still exists. So a lot of the companies that I work with, the founders are technically brilliant. They come from strong, backgrounds in computer science, software engineering, machine learning. But often they lack that real world experience or understanding of the problems. And I think in an industry like this, it's important both from a credibility perspective, but also just from a technology development perspective, to really understand the problems that you're trying to address, and not just think naively that you can go in and build some AI model and that boom, you're gonna have a tremendous impact, because that's often not the case. So that's generally the first thing, is try to instill some humility in these founders, and really have them go out and engage with their target audience, with the scientists, physicians, whoever that are going to be most impacted by the technologies that they're trying to build, so that they really develop a strong understanding of what the real problems are. I'm seeing a lot of impact already, and we'll continue to see more on the clinical side of things. So, for example, things like clinical trial design, designing, the right, putting the right patients in the right trial. I've always been enamored with this idea of personalized medicine, and I think there's probably a lot of therapeutics out there that could be very impactful to patients if the right population is identified. Right? So for me, one of the big promises of AI is to actually be able to tease out who's likely to benefit from treatment and who's not. Earlier on, really, on the discovery side, really excited by some of these new generative capabilities, and thinking about how do we generate new novel ideas, and hopefully bring things faster to the clinic, to patients. Yeah, I mean, I generally think AI is overhyped. I think understanding what the real impact is. So I think AI, like any technology, it can be very impactful in certain areas, but it's not going to come in and solve all the problems today, right? And especially when you're talking about human health, drug discovery, it's a very complex problem. So I do think it's a matter of when and not if. But I just don't think we're quite there yet. So what I'm just trying to instill in people is, yes, there are things that we can do today, that AI can do today, that's very impactful, and there are things that in the next, I'm hoping several years, it will be able to do. But to not go in with a really high expectation that it's just going to come in and transform immediately. Yeah, this is absolutely critical. I think this is critical for any application of AI, but I think it's particularly critical when you're talking about healthcare and drug discovery. Um, first of all, the data underlying a lot of these AI models is not perfect, right? So if you just naively go in and build these models with the data at hand, not realizing that maybe some of the data is not actually high quality, that maybe actually that data is not the right even piece of data for the type of model you're building, I think that's a recipe for disaster. So I think actually it's critical to have humans in the loop, even at the model building stage. And then again, going back to what I said earlier, thinking about how do what are the real problems that AI should be applied toward, is really really important. And then on the testing side, the feedback cycle is huge, right? No model is perfect. It will only get better if it learns. And yes, it will learn from data, but it also needs that insight from humans who are applying these in the real, these technologies in the real world to real problems to understand what the strengths and limitations are. So I don't think these models get better without humans directly sort of guiding their evolution. Yeah, it's a very interesting from a business model perspective. So a lot of companies, this is the evolution that I see with the companies. They start out developing technology that they're just going to sell. They're going to license. Maybe they're developing a software platform, um, and they're going to sell it to the industry. And then they realize that that's kind of limited. First of all, the market size is somewhat limited. The fact that, again, they're not solving the whole puzzle, but just a small piece of the puzzle. How do you assign value to that? So getting pricing models and things right is challenging. So what they generally do is evolve to a more shared risk type of business strategy, where they're working directly with their partners, to their customers, to apply their technologies, and then in return sharing in potential upside. So whether that's a form of a milestone, or even in some cases royalties on eventual sales of marketed drugs, but where they're more directly invested in the projects that their partners are applying their technologies to. It's also kind of a win-win from the partner side, because then they have the advantage of the people that are applying the technologies, using them, are the experts, the ones who built them. And it also gives them more bandwidth, the ability to externalize some of that work, rather than just taking a bunch of different platforms and then have to train people and how to use them. I think just makes it easier. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of it is more, I would say, as a service, but more in a shared risk fashion. Yeah, so I think all the speakers this morning hit on, I think, some of the grand challenges around data access, around just setting expectations appropriately, around building larger ecosystems, whether it's you're building something more designed for directly for the patient, or even earlier stage. So I think there's themes of hype and hope that kind of have gone throughout the talks, and thinking about AI. I think fundamentally, AI is not the standalone solution, but it's all it's going to require a cultural change. It's going to require data. It's going to require all these other human elements in order for it to be successful. And that was the theme that I saw coming through.